Good Wednesday afternoon, and thanks for being with us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Arabsky. This afternoon, state leaders speaking out about the impact of a more than $2 billion federal funding freeze on Minnesota. That money is the annual federal Medicaid funding for the entire state. Nasira Kelvy is here with their message and the feds.
Chris, we heard from State Medicaid Director John Connolly, who says the funding cut was decided even though the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services had not launched a recent audit on Minnesota's programs. According to Connolly, CMS asked for a corrective action plan for Minnesota on December 4th. Connolly said many of the corrective measures the agency wanted to see were already being implemented, and his department met the CMS deadline by submitting the plan on New Year's Day. The CMS staff his office was communicating with did not indicate that their work was insufficient. But Connolly says their plan was rejected in a, quote, unprecedented way.
Well, it certainly, as we said in our appeal letter, feels very punitive to us because this is way outside of the usual process and counter to federal regulation for how these corrective action plans are handled.
Connolly also said he met with CMS Director Dr. Mehmet Oz this morning in Minnesota, calling the meeting productive. Chris?
New today, the surge of federal immigration enforcement in the Twin Cities isn't going away for at least a week. A federal judge ruled there is not enough time to go over the merits of the state's restraining order against the Trump administration. That restraining order, filed by Attorney General Keith Ellison, called the influx of immigration agents unlawful and characterized it as a federal invasion. It's trying to stop the agents from conducting the operation in this state. The judge in the case set a deadline of January 19th for the government to respond to the lawsuit and a January 22nd deadline for the state to respond to that. Right now, the future of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota is uncertain after 6 federal prosecutors resign over the Justice Department's push to investigate Good's death and her widow. The DOJ also says there's not enough evidence for a criminal civil rights investigation into the ICE agent who pulled the trigger. Minnesota's U.S. Attorney's Office must now move forward without its top fraud investigator, Joe Thompson, one of the 6 who resigned. Thompson led the Feeding Our Future case, and his work helped deliver dozens of convictions against people who stole taxpayer dollars. We spoke to a former prosecutor from Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office who says fraud cases currently in the works will likely slow down with these departures.
When you have new attorneys that have to learn the case and start doing it from scratch, that puts you behind. Many of them are going to have to start over again, so this is not helpful for prosecuting those subsequent cases.
In the past, the DOJ Civil Rights Division would typically launch an investigation to make sure officers did not breach the rights of the shooting victim, even if no criminal charges ever came of it. Today marks 1 week since Renee Good was shot by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. At 9:37 this morning, the exact moment that she was shot and killed, the community held a prayer vigil at the site of her death. It lasted for 3 hours, and people were seen bringing in flowers and paying respects to Good. Organizers say today's about pausing, not protesting, with a focus on quiet reflection, unity, and prayer for peace in a community that is still grieving. Right now, the Department of Homeland Security says that they've arrested 2,400 people since ICE operations started in Minneapolis on November 29th. Last Wednesday, ICE reported 1,400 arrests, though DHS says the number of arrests can lag. More student walkouts taking place today in Minnesota. Over the last several days, students at high schools across the metro have been protesting ICE's presence in their communities. This afternoon, students of St. Paul Public School District and Humboldt Secondary are taking their voices to the state capitol. Students south of the Twin Cities are also walking out at Lakeville North High School as well. Right now, Minnesota-based groups are planning an economic blackout day in response to the ICE surge in Minnesota. That is planned for next Friday, January 23rd, leaders say. The groups say they are encouraging Minnesotans to skip work, school, and avoid shopping. A prominent Minnesota business was also called out by those organizations.
If you're a business here in Minnesota, Target, we're looking at you. You're a homegrown business. And yet we've watched video after video of your own employees. Some of them American citizens being snatched from your halls. Stand up, speak out.
Faith leaders say the Ice Out Day will also serve as an opportunity for prayer and reflection for those participating. Today we're learning new updates about an encounter between ICE agents and employees at the Richfield Target last week that she was mentioning. Multiple people were arrested. The events captured on multiple witnesses' cameras. Employees can be heard shouting at the federal agents in the videos that we obtain before an agent quickly moves toward one of the employees. Homeland Security says one person was detained because they assaulted an agent. But State Representative Michael Howard, who covers Richfield and who has spoken to both employees, says after their conversation, the two people detained says that's not true.
What I would say is folks can believe their own eyes. There's plenty of video that showed these workers violently being arrested. Greg Bavino himself is the one that asked these workers, are you U.S. citizens?
Bavino is the Border Patrol commander. Howard says his understanding is one of the employees was dropped off in a nearby Walmart parking lot. Hours later, there's video of him crying to a stranger and bleeding, saying that ICE hurt him when they released him. We've reached out to Target for a comment, but we've been told there is no statement coming from the company on ICE activity. Happening today, people in Washington County pushing back on reports of a planned ICE immigration detention center in Woodbury. The City Council also discussing that plan tonight. It involves turning a 500,000 square foot warehouse into a detention center that can hold up to 1,500 people. Jennifer Hoff is breaking down the concerns.
Good morning.
People packed Tuesday's Washington County Board meeting.
We had over 200 people.
The most
Yes.
Commissioner Carla Bigham has ever seen in the 7 years she's served, pushing back against a reported proposal to turn a warehouse there into an ICE detention facility.
We must pursue every possibility, no matter how small, to push back.
Details first emerging last month in the Washington Post, alleging the Trump administration wants to convert warehouses into large-scale centers ahead of deportation and smaller processing sites to, quote, increase efficiency, including this industrial property in Woodbury that's for sale along I-94.
What's happening here is a prototype for federal invasions elsewhere.
Bigham says the board doesn't support the idea, even writing this letter to Minnesota's congressional delegation expressing their concerns, saying the area will lose tax dollars if the feds own the building.
But most importantly, we can't afford it from a constitutional perspective, a due process perspective, and for sure, a humanitarian perspective.
Last summer, the newspaper also reported the administration was eyeing a private prison that had long been closed in western Minnesota for the same reason. City officials there telling me its owner is pursuing a contract with ICE.
The eyes of the nation are on Minnesota right now, and we are stepping up.
Taking a stand in what some say are unsettling times.
People, again, want to be heard and they want transparency. And I think that is what government should be doing.
The Woodbury mayor also released a statement sharing similar concerns, but said she has not been contacted by any federal agency about the building. The Department of Homeland Security hasn't responded to our request for comment, but told the Washington Post that it couldn't confirm its reporting. Stay with KARE 11 as we follow this developing story. We're going to share the latest updates as we learn them on air, online, and of course on KARE 11 Plus as well.
Developing story now, police say an employee has admitted to intentionally causing harm in a case of an infant death at a daycare in Savage. This comes just a day after police made their first arrest after months of investigation. The incident happened at Rocking Horse Ranch back in September last year. 11-month-old Harvey Mucklebust was found unresponsive and later died. Just days earlier, police responded to another baby throwing up a, quote, blood-like substance at the daycare. Hours prior to Harvey being found, police responded to another call for that first child experiencing the same issue. Police say that one female employee was a common denominator in all three incidents, leading to an arrest and ultimately, they say, to a confession.
She provided detailed descriptions of how she carried out the attempts against the life of the first victim on 2 separate occasions. And she confessed to the murder of Harvey Mucklebust.
According to authorities, the woman has a history of past incidents involving starting fires at a church camp and erratic behavior against other children. At this time, charges have not been filed.
In a week, House Republicans say they will hold former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress. That comes after both refused to testify in the Oversight Committee's Epstein probe. Committee Chairman James Comer said Republicans and Democrats want to hear from Clintons about their interactions with the convicted sex offender.
We believe that because this subpoena was issued in a bipartisan fashion, the Democrats acted the day that the subpoenas were voted on in the subcommittee like they wanted the Clintons to come, because they at that time, if you go back, they were wanting me to subpoena the estate, which I did. We subpoenaed the estate and got all the documents, everything. That was what the victims asked. That's what the Democrats asked. I think that's what the American people wanted.
Today, Comer released a letter in which the Clintons' lawyers claim the subpoenas were, quote, invalid and legally unenforceable, end quote. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.